For the third Sunday in Lent, we hear just beautiful readings of a revelation of God's heart for his people. Now remember, the first readings throughout this season have really had some connection to the Exodus event, and this one in particular, the call of Moses, is so obviously connected. But I was thinking about how last week, around the first reading, there are those verses where God predicts for Abraham that his people are going to have to be slaves in a foreign country for 400 years until they're strong enough to drive out the evil practices and the peoples of the land that was promised to him. And you can almost get the sense in that God is somewhat indifferent to the suffering of his people, that it's just a practical thing that they have to do to get strong enough. And yet today's reading, the call of Moses by God, reveals his heart and the fact that he really does care so deeply about his people. His heart is moved by their plight. He sees their plight, he hears their cry, and he says, that's why I am coming down to rescue them at exactly the right time. So they are strong enough as a people. They have endured the affliction that led to this great prosperity, at least in numbers and strength. And also it's going to align with the kind of the peak evil of the people of the promised land. So God will lead them up and out into the land. So far from indifference, he cares very much. And really, when you go to the gospel reading, it's kind of one of those that if we don't know the historical context, the Tower of Siloam falling on people and 18 people dying, or the blood of the Galileans who Pilate mingled with the sacrifices. It's like, what? I don't even know what that means. But the point of it for us is, as Jesus says, their guilt wasn't any worse than anybody else's. He's responding to this idea within us that oftentimes we think when bad things happen to people, it's because they did bad things. And God doesn't operate like that. Unfortunately, as we live in this fallen world, there are terrible things that happen, and there are evil things that are out there, and sometimes we experience them, but it is not a one-to-one relationship between the bad things that I do and the bad things that I experience. God is not out to get you, and he's not out to inflict the bad things that happen to you. Not only that, you even go to the image of the fig tree. It hadn't borne fruit in several years, and what does Jesus do? He uses this image that the gardener comes and says, give it one more year. Let me work with it. Let me try to provide all the tender, loving care that it needs to bear fruit. Like, God doesn't want to give up on us. So his heart is tender and it's moved for our plight. He hears us when we cry out. He's not out to inflict pain on us, but rather wants to give us every opportunity to bear fruit in his name. So, let's remember that as we journey through this season of Lent, that even when things are difficult, even when we experience the evils of life and the world, that God's heart goes out to us and he responds when we cry out and wants to lead us out of Egypt and into the promised land.